Girl was found doing it with a horse. What happened shocks everyone. The morning light filtered through Anna's bedroom blinds, casting thin stripes across her unmade bed. Her alarm had been buzzing for 15 minutes, but she couldn't bring herself to move. This was the third time this week she'd struggled to get up, and it was only Wednesday. At 34, Anna should have been at the peak of her career energy, but lately, everything felt like it was moving in slow motion. She finally dragged herself out of bed, immediately checking her phone. 23 emails had arrived overnight. Her stomach churned as she scrolled through them. Urgent client requests, last-minute meeting changes, and a reminder about the quarterly review presentation she hadn't started yet. The familiar weight of anxiety settled on her chest as she shuffled to the bathroom. The face in the mirror looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes that even her expensive concealer couldn't fully hide anymore. Anna splashed cold water on her face, trying to wake herself up. The sound of traffic outside her apartment window grew louder as the city came to life. Car horns, construction work, and the constant hum of people rushing to their destinations. It used to energize her, but now it just made her head pound. Her morning routine had become mechanical. Shower, coffee, makeup, professional outfit. She used to take pride in picking out stylish combinations, but these days she stuck to basic black pants and white blouses. It was easier, less thinking required. The coffee maker gurgled and sputtered, filling her kitchen with the only smell that still brought her comfort in the mornings. Just get through today, she muttered to herself, a mantra that had become all too familiar. Her phone buzzed again, Sarah, her best friend, checking in. Anna ignored it, like she'd been ignoring most personal messages lately. She'd make up an excuse later about being busy with work. Sarah would understand. She always did. Maybe that was part of the problem. The subway ride to work was a blur of bodies pressed together, everyone avoiding eye contact, all trapped in their own personal bubbles of stress and deadlines. Anna stood near the door, holding the rail with one hand and her phone with the other, mindlessly scrolling through emails. Each stop brought more people, more pressure, more of that suffocating feeling she couldn't shake. Her marketing firm occupied 3 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of downtown. Anna remembered her first day here 5 years ago, how proud she'd felt walking through those glass doors. Now she barely noticed the impressive lobby or the view from her corner office. Everything had become background noise to the constant buzz of anxiety in her head. Morning, Anna, her assistant, Tom, called out as she walked past his desk. The client from Singapore called again about the campaign revisions. And Marketing Weekly wants to know if you're still up for that interview about digital innovation in the industry. Anna nodded, not really processing the words. More tasks, more expectations, more pressure to maintain her image as the rising star of digital marketing. She'd worked so hard for this position, sacrificed so much. Why didn't it feel worth it anymore? Her office was exactly as she'd left it the night before. Neat stacks of papers, dual monitors displaying endless spreadsheets, and a small collection of industry awards gathering dust on a shelf. She sat down heavily in her ergonomic chair, which cost more than her first month's rent in the city, and stared at her calendar. Back-to-back meetings until 7 p.m., then dinner with potential clients. The first signs of a headache began to pulse behind her eyes. Anna reached for the bottle of painkillers she kept in her desk drawer, only to find it empty. Another thing to add to her never-ending to-do list. She opened her laptop, and dozens of notification bubbles popped up immediately. Slack messages, emails, calendar reminders, project deadlines, all demanding her attention at once. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother, probably calling to check why she'd missed their weekly Sunday call. Anna watched it ring until it stopped. The guilt would come later, but right now she couldn't handle another conversation about why she was working so hard, why she was still single, why she never visited anymore. Her mother meant well, but she didn't understand what it took to succeed in this city. The morning meetings blurred together. Anna heard herself speaking confidently about engagement metrics and conversion rates, saw herself nodding at the right moments, but it felt like she was watching someone else perform her life. In between meetings, she caught glimpses of her colleagues chatting and laughing in the break room. When had she stopped joining them? She couldn't remember the last time she'd had lunch with anyone instead of eating at her desk. By late afternoon, the headache had spread to her neck and shoulders. Anna stood at her office window, looking down at the tiny people rushing along the sidewalks below. From up here, they looked like ants, all following their predetermined paths. Was that all she was too? Just another ant in the colony, following a path she hadn't really chosen? Sarah texted again. Haven't seen you in weeks. Worried about you. Dinner tonight. Anna started typing excuses, but stopped. Instead, she just closed the message. The thought of maintaining a conversation, of having to explain why she felt so empty, was exhausting. Her computer chimed with another meeting reminder. This one was with the board, reviewing next quarter's strategy. Anna gathered her materials, straightened her blazer, and headed to the conference room. She could do this. She'd done it 100 times before. But as she sat there, presenting growth projections and marketing initiatives, a strange feeling began to rise in her chest. The words coming out of her mouth felt hollow. The graphs and charts on the screen seemed meaningless. She watched the board members nodding approvingly, making notes, completely bought into the importance of it all. Why couldn't she feel that anymore? When had she lost the excitement that used to drive her? After the meeting, Anna returned to her office and closed the door. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. She should start preparing for the client dinner, but instead, she found herself opening her laptop and typing countryside retreats into the search bar. Images of rolling hills, quiet farms, and peaceful landscapes filled her screen. Something stirred inside her, a longing she'd been trying to ignore. She clicked through pictures of small towns, bed and breakfasts, and rural properties for rent. In one photo, a horse grazed in a misty morning field. Anna caught herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in weeks. The spell was broken by a knock on her door. Tom poked his head in. Your car's here for the client dinner. Want me to grab your coat? Anna closed her laptop quickly, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. Yes, thanks. She gathered her things, pushing away thoughts of escape. She had responsibilities, deadlines, people counting on her. She couldn't just walk away from everything she'd built. The client dinner dragged on for hours. Anna played her part perfectly, charming, professional, completely in control. But underneath the polished exterior, something was cracking. Every forced laugh, every carefully worded response felt like another small piece of herself breaking away. It was nearly midnight when she finally got home. Her apartment felt smaller than ever, the walls pressing in. She kicked off her heels and sat in the dark, listening to the never-ending city noise outside. Her phone showed 5 missed calls and dozens of messages, but she couldn't bring herself to look at them. Instead, she opened her laptop again and returned to the countryside images. This time, she found herself looking at specific locations, prices, availability. Her cursor hovered over the Book Now button for a small farm stay 3 hours from the city. Just for a weekend, she told herself. Just to clear her head. But deep down, Anna knew a weekend wouldn't be enough. The pressure had been building for too long, the cracks spreading too far. She needed more than a brief escape. She needed a complete break from this life that was slowly suffocating her. She fell asleep on the couch, her laptop still open to images of that peaceful countryside. In her dreams, she was running through open fields, no deadlines chasing her, no expectations weighing her down. For the first time in months, her sleep wasn't interrupted by anxiety-induced wake-ups or work-related stress dreams. The next morning, something had changed. The familiar rush of morning traffic seemed more grating than usual. The weight of her laptop bag felt heavier. Even the taste of her morning coffee was off. As she stood in her kitchen, staring at her reflection in the window, Anna finally admitted to herself what she'd been feeling for months. She couldn't do this anymore. She needed to get out. Not just for a weekend, not just for a vacation, but really out. Away from the endless meetings, the constant pressure, the superficial connections. Away from a life that had somehow become all about maintaining an image she no longer recognized. The question was, did she have the courage to actually do it? The first person to notice something was wrong was Tom. Monday morning came, and Anna's office remained dark. No emails, no calls, no messages about working from home. By lunch, her absence had become the main topic of conversation in the break room. By evening, concern had started to creep in. Maybe she's sick, Tom suggested to Sarah when she called the office looking for Anna. But she always lets me know if she's not coming in. Always. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Anna had seemed different lately, distant, distracted, but this was completely out of character. Sarah hung up and immediately called Anna's mother, Janet. "Have you heard from Anna?" The worry in her voice was clear. "She's not answering any of my messages, and she missed our coffee date yesterday." Janet hadn't heard from her daughter either, not since their Miss Sunday call the week before. The next day, Sarah used her spare key to check Anna's apartment. Everything looked normal at first glance. No signs of struggle, no obvious chaos. But small details started to jump out. The closet was half empty, with gaps where everyday clothes should have been. The bathroom was missing basic toiletries. Her laptop was gone, along with her passport from the drawer where she always kept it. She packed a bag, Sarah realized, sitting heavily on Anna's perfectly made bed. She planned this. The realization brought both relief and hurt. Relief that this wasn't a random disappearance. Hurt that Anna hadn't trusted her enough to say anything. The police arrived that afternoon, called by Janet despite Sarah's hesitation. 2 officers walked through the apartment, taking notes and asking questions. When was the last time anyone saw her? Had she been acting unusual lately? Any history of mental health issues? Sarah and Janet answered as best they could, each response making them realize how much Anna had withdrawn in recent months. Officer Chun, a woman about Anna's age, studied the apartment with careful eyes. "Her credit cards?" she asked. Sarah pulled up their shared shopping account on her phone. No activity since last week. Phone. Straight to voicemail. Location services turned off. Car. Still in its usual spot in the building's garage. So she left voluntarily, Officer Chin concluded, but doesn't want to be found. She'd seen cases like this before, successful professionals burning out, walking away from their lives. Usually they turned up within a few days, embarrassed and ready to return to their routines. But something about this felt different. The news spread quickly through Anna's office. Her clients were reassigned, her projects redistributed. People spoke about her in hushed tones, speculation running wild. Had the pressure finally gotten to her? Was there something going on they hadn't known about? Her desk sat untouched, a silent reminder of her absence. Janet set up camp in Anna's apartment, convinced her daughter would return any minute. She cleaned obsessively, rearranged furniture, and called everyone Anna had ever known. Each night, she fell asleep on the couch, the TV news playing in the background, hoping for any information about her daughter. Sarah threw herself into searching, creating social media posts that quickly went viral. Missing, Anna Chun, 34. Last seen in downtown area. Please contact. The posts were shared thousands of times, reaching far beyond their city. Tips started coming in. Someone thought they saw her at a bus station, another at a cafe 2 states over. Each lead proved false. Days stretched into a week. The police investigation continued, but without signs of foul play. It wasn't high priority. They tracked her last known movements, a large cash withdrawal from her bank, a stop at a convenience store for basic supplies, then nothing. The security camera footage showed her looking calm, purposeful. This wasn't a snap decision. She'd planned her escape carefully. The media picked up the story in the second week. Local news at first, then national outlets. They loved the angle. Successful executive vanishes without a trace. The pressure of perfect. When success becomes too much, read one headline. Modern Life claims another victim, declared another. Anna's face appeared on morning shows and news segments, her story becoming a talking point about mental health and workplace stress. Janet hated seeing her daughter's life reduced to sound bites and speculation. "They don't know her," she told Sarah one evening, as they sat in Anna's apartment watching another news report. "They're making her into some kind of symbol. She's my daughter, not a cautionary tale." Sarah found herself defending Anna to curious colleagues and concerned friends. "She's not crazy," she'd insist. "She was just tired." really tired. But privately, she wondered if she'd missed something important. Had she been too caught up in her own life to notice her best friend drowning? The police investigation hit dead ends everywhere they looked. Anna had been careful. No credit card traces, no phone signals to track. Officer Chen interviewed her colleagues, building a picture of a woman who'd been quietly unraveling for months. She was always the first one in, last one out, her coworkers said. Never complained, never said no to extra work. Maybe that was the problem. 3 weeks after Anna's disappearance, the missing person posters started to fade and curl at the edges. Her story moved from front-page news to small updates in the local section. The initial flood of tips slowed to a trickle, then stopped entirely. The world, it seemed, was ready to move on. But for those closest to her, moving on wasn't an option. Janet still slept in Anna's apartment, though she'd stopped expecting to find her daughter there each morning. Sarah kept their weekly coffee dates, sitting alone at their usual table, hoping Anna might just appear one day with that apologetic smile of hers. Tom kept her office exactly as she'd left it, despite pressure to clear the space for someone new. He'd found himself talking to her empty chair sometimes, updating her on office gossip or client drama. "You'd love this," he'd say, before remembering she wasn't there to respond. The police officially classified the case as voluntary missing person, keeping it open but inactive. Officer Chen delivered the news personally to Janet and Sarah. "Sometimes people need to disappear," she said gently. "Sometimes it's the only way they know to save themselves." Sarah remembered something Anna had said months ago during one of their last real conversations. They'd been walking through the park. Anna, unusually quiet. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she'd asked. "Like you woke up one day and found yourself playing a part you never auditioned for?" Sarah had laughed it off then, made some joke about middle-age crisis. Now the words haunted her. Janet finally returned to her own home after a month, leaving Anna's apartment exactly as it was, like a museum to her daughter's former life. The rent was paid automatically from Anna's account, which still received her salary deposits. The company hadn't officially terminated her yet, unsure how to handle the situation. The city moved on as cities do. New stories took over the news cycle. New faces filled the missing person posters. But in certain corners, a mother's heart, a best friend's memories, an assistant's daily routine, Anna's absence remained a constant ache, a puzzle without all its pieces. Then, just as hope began to fade, when even those closest to her had started to accept that they might never know what happened, a phone call came into the police station. A farmer, hours away from the city, had a story to tell. A strange story about a woman and a horse, about someone who might be the missing executive everyone had been looking for. Officer Chen listened to the farmer's report with growing interest. After weeks of nothing, here was something concrete. Something that, bizarre as it sounded, might finally explain what had happened to Anna Chen. The question was, would they find the Anna they'd lost, or someone else entirely? Officer Chen sat at her desk, rewinding the recorded call for the third time. The farmer's gravelly voice crackled through her headphones. "I seen her out there, doing it with that horse of mine. Every morning, same time, like clockwork." Something about his tone made her pause. There wasn't any alarm or concern. If anything, he sounded amused. "Could you clarify what you mean by doing it?" she'd asked during the call. The farmer had chuckled. "You know, spending time with him, leading him around, brushing him, talking to him like he's people. Never seen someone bond with an animal so quick." The media, of course, latched onto the phrase "doing it" without context. Within hours of the tip becoming public, headlines exploded across social networks. "Missing executive found doing it with horse," screamed one tabloid. "Urban professional's shocking rural secret," declared another. The innuendo spread like wildfire, each retelling more sensational than the last. Sarah nearly choked on her coffee when she saw the notifications flooding her phone. "This is ridiculous," she told Janet over the phone. "They're turning Anna's story into some kind of twisted fantasy. It's probably not even her." But deep down, something about it felt right. Anna had always loved horses as a kid. She'd taken riding lessons until work took over her life. The police station was flooded with calls from reporters seeking details. Officer Chen fielded them with practiced patience. "We're investigating a potential lead in the disappearance of Anna Chen. That's all I can say at this time." But privately, she was intrigued. The location matched their search radius, and the timing lined up with Anna's disappearance. The farmer, Bill Henderson, owned a small property 3 hours from the city. When Officer Chen called him back for more details, his description was compelling. Tall woman, dark hair, keeps to herself mostly. Started showing up about a month ago, right after old Joe, that's my farmhand, left for his sisters in Florida. Thought she was just another city folk looking to play farmer, but she actually knows her way around horses. The local coffee shop in Henderson's town was buzzing with gossip. Most of the regulars had noticed the newcomer, though few had spoken to her. "Polite but quiet," said the barista who served her morning coffee. "Pays in cash. Never uses her phone. Seems at peace, you know? Not like most city people who come through here." Meanwhile, in the city, Anna's story took on new life. Social media exploded with theories and interpretations. Some saw her as a victim of burnout who'd found an unconventional path to healing. Others painted her as an unstable woman who'd cracked under pressure. Memes and jokes about doing it with horses spread rapidly, each one cutting deeper for those who actually knew her. Janet was devastated by the coverage. "They're making my daughter sound crazy," she cried to Sarah. "Anna's not crazy. She's just Anna." Sarah held her friend's mother, remembering how Anna used to talk about horses when they were younger, the way her eyes would light up at the mere mention of riding. Tom defended Anna fiercely at the office, shutting down jokes and speculation. "You don't know her," he'd snap at snickering colleagues. "None of you really knew her." He remembered finding a small horse figurine in her desk drawer once, how she'd quickly tucked it away when he noticed, almost embarrassed by this small connection to a younger, freer version of herself. The story spread beyond local news, catching the attention of national media. Talk shows debated the psychological implications of a successful executive abandoning her life for a rural existence. Experts were brought in to discuss everything from burnout to ecotherapy to the human-animal bond. Anna's story became a Rorschach test for society's views on success, mental health, and the price of modern living. Officer Chen decided to investigate personally, tired of the speculation and sensationalism. She drove out to Henderson's farm early one morning, following the worn dirt road through fields still heavy with dew. The property was modest but well-maintained, a small farmhouse, a weathered barn, and several fenced paddocks where horses grazed peacefully. Bill Henderson met her at the gate, a weathered man in his 60s with kind eyes and calloused hands. "Figured you'd come eventually," he said, leading her toward the barn. "She's usually here around this time." As they walked, he explained how he'd first encountered the woman who might be Anna. Found her one morning just standing at the fence, watching the horses. Something about her seemed lost, you know? Not physically lost, she knew where she was. Lost inside. He'd offered her a cup of coffee, and they talked. Not about where she came from or who she was, but about horses, about the simple rhythm of farm life. She needed work, I needed help with the horses since Joe left. Seemed like fate, Bill continued. She's good with them, especially that old gelding over there. He pointed to a bay horse grazing alone near the fence. That's Thunder. Been trying to gentle him for years, but he's always been standoffish. Until her. As they approached the barn, they heard soft voices inside. Officer Chen tensed, ready for anything, but Bill just smiled. They peered through the door to see a woman brushing a horse, talking to it quietly as she worked. Her back was to them, but her movements were confident, practiced. The woman's hair was longer than in Anna's photos, and her designer clothes had been replaced by worn jeans and a flannel shirt. But there was something in her posture, in the careful way she handled the brush, that matched the precise, perfectionist executive from the case file. Before Officer Chen could speak, Bill cleared his throat. The woman turned, and there was no doubt, it was Anna Chen. But she wasn't the polished professional from the missing person posters. This Anna looked weathered, tanned, and utterly at peace. I wondered when someone would find me, Anna said simply, continuing to brush the horse. No panic, no attempt to run. Just calm acceptance and the steady rhythm of the brush against the horse's coat. Officer Chen found herself at a loss for words. After weeks of searching, after all the speculation and sensational headlines, the reality was almost anticlimactic. Here was the missing executive, not in some dramatic crisis or scandal, but quietly caring for a horse in a sun-dappled barn. The phrase "doing it" took on its true meaning as Officer Chen watched Anna work. This was what the farmer had meant, the simple act of being with the horse, of finding purpose in care and connection. The media's salacious interpretation said more about society's mindset than it did about Anna's choices. Anna finally put down the brush and turned to fully face Officer Chen. "I know people are worried," she said. "I know I should have handled things differently, but I couldn't think of any other way to save myself." Her voice was stronger than in the videos from her office, her eyes clearer. The horse nudged her shoulder gently, and Anna smiled, a real smile, not the professional mask from her corporate photos. In that moment, Officer Chen understood something crucial about this case. Sometimes, running away isn't about escape. It's about finding your way back to yourself. But as she watched Anna with the horse, Chen knew this story was far from over. The world was waiting for answers, and now they had to figure out how to protect this peace Anna had found while addressing the chaos her disappearance had caused. The real challenge was just beginning. Officer Chen radioed for backup, standard procedure for a missing person case, but found herself hoping her colleagues would take their time arriving. There was something delicate about this moment, something that needed to be understood before the full force of the investigation descended on this peaceful farm. Anna led Thunder back to his stall, her movements unhurried and deliberate. The contrast between this woman and the corporate executive from the case file was striking. Her designer suits had been replaced by mud-stained work boots and worn jeans. Her carefully styled hair now hung in a simple braid, streaked with lighter strands from hours in the sun. "Would you like some coffee?" Bill offered, gesturing toward the farmhouse. "Might as well be comfortable while we wait for your people to arrive." Chen accepted, and the three of them walked across the yard. Anna moved with the easy confidence of someone who belonged here, navigating around farm equipment and ducking under low-hanging branches without breaking stride. The farmhouse kitchen was warm and lived in, with sunlight streaming through gingham curtains. A far cry from the sterile modern apartment Anna had left behind. Bill busied himself with a coffee maker while Anna sat at the wooden table, absent-mindedly picking at a scratch in its surface. "I suppose you have questions," Anna said, looking at Chen. Her voice was steady, carrying none of the defensive tone Chen usually heard from people who'd been found after deliberately disappearing. "Everyone will have questions." Chen pulled out her notebook, but didn't open it yet. "Why don't you just tell me what happened? In your own words." Sometimes the best investigative technique was simply to listen. Anna's fingers traced the wooden grain of the table as she spoke. "I didn't plan it, not really. That last week in the city, everything felt like it was closing in. The noise, the pressure, the endless demands. I couldn't breathe anymore." She paused, taking a deep breath, as if remembering that feeling. "I'd been looking at countryside retreats online, just daydreaming really. Then one morning, I just left." Bill set mugs of coffee in front of them, the steam rising in the morning light. "Found her standing at my fence line," he added, settling into a chair. Looking at Thunder like he held all the answers she was seeking. "I used to ride as a kid," Anna explained, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Every summer at my grandparents' farm. It was the last time I remember feeling truly free. When I saw Thunder that morning, something just clicked into place." The sound of approaching vehicles made them all look up. Through the window, Chen could see two police cars pulling up the dirt driveway, kicking up dust in the morning sun. Anna's shoulders tensed slightly, but she didn't move from her seat. "They'll need to search the property," Chen explained gently. "Standard procedure. And there will be paperwork, a lot of it. Missing person cases don't just go away with a cup of coffee." Anna nodded, understanding. "I know. I knew this couldn't last forever. I just needed time, space to breathe." She looked out the window toward the barn where Thunder was stabled. "I found more than that, though. I found myself again. The other officers entered the farmhouse, their presence filling the cozy kitchen with an official atmosphere that felt out of place. Chun introduced everyone, watching as Anna answered their questions with the same calm dignity she'd shown earlier. Yes, she had left voluntarily. No, she hadn't been coerced. Yes, she understood the resources that had been spent searching for her. As the officers spread out to search the property, Chun stayed with Anna. They walked the grounds together, Anna pointing out where she slept, a small converted office above the barn, and showing them her few possessions. Everything fit into one duffel bag, a stark contrast to the walk-in closet she'd left behind. Bill needed help with the horses, Anna explained as they watched the officers document the scene. His usual hand was away, and I needed something real. Something that mattered in a way quarterly reports and market projections never did. She smiled slightly. It was a fair trade. Work for room and board, and the chance to spend time with Thunder. The horse in question watched them from his paddock, his ears pricked forward with interest. Chun noticed how he followed Anna's movements, how he'd angle himself to keep her in sight. It was clear the farmer hadn't exaggerated about their connection. The media's having a field day with this, Chun said carefully. Doing it with horses has become quite the sensation. She watched Anna's reaction, saw the flash of anger quickly replaced by resignation. Of course they are, Anna sighed. Everything has to be sensationalized, twisted into something provocative. Heaven forbid someone just wants a simpler life. She ran a hand along the fence rail, weathered wood smooth under her fingers. That's partly why I stayed away so long. I knew once people found me, everything would become a story, a scandal, a cautionary tale. The search concluded by mid-morning. No signs of foul play, no evidence of anything beyond what Anna had already told them. Just the simple story of a woman who'd chosen to walk away from one life to find another. But as the officers gathered their evidence and prepared their reports, Chun could see the bigger challenge looming. Anna's disappearance had become more than just a missing person case. It had touched something in the public consciousness, sparked discussions about modern life, mental health, and the price of success. They're going to want to talk to you, Chun said as they walked back to the farmhouse. Reporters, talk shows, anyone looking for their next viral story. Are you ready for that? Anna stopped, looking out over the peaceful fields. Thunder nickered softly from his paddock, and she smiled at the sound. No, she admitted, but I don't think anyone's ever ready for their private choices to become public property. Bill joined them on the porch, his weathered face concerned. She's welcome to stay here as long as she needs, he said firmly. Been the best help I've had in years. Works hard, understands the animals. Don't let them drive her away with their nonsense. Chun nodded, understanding the protective instinct. She'd seen enough cases to know how quickly media attention could destroy the very peace people were seeking. But she'd also seen something rare here, someone who'd found exactly what they were looking for, even if it wasn't what anyone else expected. As the police cars prepared to leave, Anna stood at the farmhouse door, Thunder watching from his paddock. She looked nothing like the polished executive from her missing person photos, but she looked real in a way those photos never had. The search was over, but Chun suspected Anna's journey was just beginning. The real question now was whether the world would let her continue on the path she'd chosen, or if the very attention her disappearance had attracted would end up destroying the peace she'd found. Looking at Anna's quiet determination and Thunder's steady presence, Chun hoped it would be the former. Sometimes the best endings weren't endings at all, but new beginnings in disguise. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the farm as Anna finally sat down to make the calls she'd been dreading. She chose her mother first, knowing she deserved to hear everything before the media twisted it further. Officer Chun had left her card and a gentle warning that the story would break soon, with or without Anna's input. Mom? Anna's voice cracked slightly as Janet answered on the first ring. The silence on the other end was deafening, broken only by a sharp intake of breath. Anna? Janet's voice wavered between relief and disbelief. Oh God, Anna, is it really you? The conversation that followed was messy, emotional, and raw. Anna explained everything, the crushing weight of her corporate life, the panic attacks she'd hidden from everyone, the moment she'd realized she needed to escape. Janet listened, crying quietly, occasionally interjecting with questions or soft sounds of understanding. "I found Thunder," Anna said, watching the horse graze through the kitchen window. Or maybe he found me. Either way, he helped me remember who I used to be before spreadsheets and marketing strategies took over my life. Janet was quiet for a moment. "Your writing ribbons are still in your old room," she finally said. "I used to look at them sometimes, wondering when you stopped doing the things that made you happy." The sun had shifted significantly by the time Anna hung up, promising to stay in touch and to be careful with the media attention. Her next call was to Sarah, who answered with a string of expletives that made Anna laugh for the first time in what felt like ages. "You absolute idiot," Sarah said, but there was love in her voice. "Do you know how worried we've been? And now there's all this crazy horse stuff in the news." "Yeah, about that," Anna sighed, explaining the real story behind the sensational headlines. Sarah listened, occasionally snorting at the media's wild interpretations. "Only you would accidentally create a scandal by trying to find peace," Sarah said finally. "But Anna, are you really okay?" "Really?" Anna looked around the farmhouse kitchen, at the mud on her boots by the door, at Thunder's peaceful form in the paddock outside. "Yeah," she said softly. "For the first time in years, I actually am." Bill gave her space for these conversations, busying himself with farm chores, but he kept the coffee pot full and left a plate of his sister's homemade cookies on the table. His quiet support had been a constant through all of this, never pushing for explanations or details. As evening approached, Anna walked out to Thunder's paddock. The horse came to her immediately, nickering softly. She leaned against his warm neck, breathing in the familiar scent of hay and horse that had become more like home than her expensive apartment ever had. "I didn't plan any of this," she told Thunder, running her hand along his smooth coat. "I just needed to breathe." The horse listened with pricked ears, as he always did. In the weeks she'd been here, he'd become her closest confidant, bearing witness to her transformation without judgment. The next morning brought the first wave of reporters. They gathered at the farm's gate, cameras ready, hoping to catch a glimpse of the executive who'd traded boardrooms for barn stalls. Bill met them with firm politeness, protecting Anna's privacy while she continued her morning routine with the horses. "She's not some circus attraction," he told them gruffly. "She's just a person who needed a change. Now, unless you want to learn about actual farm work, I suggest you find another story." Some left, but others stayed, setting up cameras along the road. Anna watched from the barn, feeling oddly detached from the spectacle. The woman they were hoping to capture, the polished executive who'd supposedly had a breakdown, didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never really had. Officer Chen visited again, this time unofficially. She brought coffee and a warning. The story's gaining traction. Everyone loves a good escape from the rat race tale, especially when there's a hint of scandal. You might want to consider making a statement. Control the narrative before it controls you. Anna nodded, brushing Thunder as she considered her options. The horse leaned into her touch, steady and grounding. "I'll do one interview," she decided. "One chance to tell the truth, then they can write whatever they want." She chose a local reporter, a woman who covered farming communities and seemed less interested in sensation than substance. They met in Bill's kitchen, Thunder visible through the window behind them. The reporter, Kate, took notes as Anna explained her journey. "I was dying inside," Anna said simply. "Not dramatically, not all at once. Just slowly, day by day, meeting by meeting. When people say they're dying for their job, we treat it like a joke, but it's not. We're actually dying, sacrificing our souls, our joy, our chance to really live." Kate wrote quickly, asking thoughtful questions about burnout, about society's definition of success, about the healing power of connecting with animals. There was no sensationalism, no attempt to twist the story into something scandalous. "And the phrase 'doing it with horses'?" Kate asked, addressing the elephant in the room. Anna actually laughed. "Bill meant I was working with them, spending time with them." The fact that people immediately assume something else says more about our society's mindset than it does about what actually happened here. The interview continued as the sun moved across the sky. Anna spoke about finding Thunder, about the way he'd helped her remember who she was beneath all the corporate armor. She talked about the simple rhythm of farm life, the satisfaction of physical work, the peace she'd found in caring for something other than profit margins. "I'm not saying everyone should run away to a farm," she clarified. "But everyone should have the courage to recognize when they're losing themselves and the strength to do something about it." As Kate packed up her notebook, she paused. "You know this won't stop them all," she said gently. "Some will still try to make it sensational." Anna nodded, watching Thunder graze peacefully. "I know. But at least the truth will be out there for those who want to hear it." That evening, after the reporters had gone and the farm was quiet again, Anna sat on the fence of Thunder's paddock. Bill joined her, bringing 2 mugs of coffee. "You did good today," he said simply. "Told your truth." Anna took a sip of coffee, letting the warmth spread through her. "Think anyone will understand?" Bill watched Thunder amble over to them, his coat golden in the setting sun. "Some will. The ones who need to. Sometimes that's enough." The truth was out now, for better or worse. Anna had revealed her escape, explained her choices. What happened next would depend on how the world chose to receive it. But looking at Thunder, at the peace she'd found here, she knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't be going back to her old life. Some escapes, it turns out, are really just returns to who you were always meant to be. Kate's article hit the local paper first, then went viral online. The honest simplicity of Anna's story resonated with people in a way the sensational headlines never had. Social media filled with shares and comments from others who recognized their own struggles in her words. "I'm dying inside" became a rallying cry for workplace reform discussions. Sarah was the first to visit the farm, arriving early one morning with 2 cups of their favorite coffee. She stopped short when she saw Anna in the barn, hair messy and clothes dirty from morning chores. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sarah started laughing. "You know," she said, handing Anna coffee, "when you said you needed a lifestyle change, I thought you meant yoga or meditation. Not this." She gestured at the barn, the horses, Anna's mud-covered boots. Anna grinned, taking a sip. "To be fair, I didn't exactly plan this either." Thunder stuck his head over his stall door, nickering for attention. Sarah approached cautiously, letting him sniff her hand. "He's beautiful," she said softly, stroking his nose. "Different from the horses you used to ride at summer camp." She paused, watching Anna with Thunder. "You're different too. Good, different." They spent the morning together, Anna showing Sarah her daily routine. Sarah tried to help with chores, but mostly just got in the way, laughing at her own clumsiness. It felt good, normal, like the friendship they'd had before careers and expectations had started building walls between them. "I miss you," Sarah admitted as they sat on hay bales eating lunch. "The city's not the same without you." But she looked around the farm, at the peace in Anna's face. "I get it now. Why you had to leave." Janet visited next, bringing enough home-cooked food to feed the entire farm. She burst into tears when she saw Anna, but they were happy tears this time. "You look like yourself again," she said, touching Anna's suntanned face. "Like my little girl, who used to beg for riding lessons." They sat in Bill's kitchen, sharing stories and memories. Janet had brought old photos, Anna at her first riding competition, beaming on a pony half the size of Thunder. "When did we let go of these dreams?" Janet wondered aloud. "When did we decide success meant giving up the things that made us happy?" Bill joined them for dinner, his quiet presence a comfort as Anna navigated these emotional reunions. He'd become something between a father figure and a mentor, teaching her not just about horses, but about living authentically. The changes weren't just in Anna's world. Her story had sparked conversations in her old office, Tom told her during his visit. People were questioning the culture of constant availability, the expectation of sacrificing personal life for professional success. Some of the younger staff started a wellness committee, Tom said, helping Anna carry water buckets. "They're pushing for actual work-life balance, not just the buzzword version. Your disappearing act made them brave, I think." Anna felt strange hearing about these changes, proud, but also slightly guilty. "I didn't mean to become some kind of symbol," she told Thunder later that night, brushing his coat in the quiet barn. "I just needed to save myself." The media attention gradually shifted from sensational to substantive. Journalists wanted to talk about burnout culture, about the healing power of human-animal bonds, about redefining success. Anna agreed to a few more interviews, always conducted at the farm with Thunder nearby. "Do you regret how you left?" one reporter asked, watching Anna work with Thunder in the round pen. Anna thought carefully before answering. "I regret the worry I caused the people who love me," she said finally. "But I don't regret leaving. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to step outside it completely." Her old company reached out through formal channels, offering her position back with improved work-life balance. Anna declined politely, but firmly. She had no desire to return to that life, no matter how they dressed it up. Instead, she started working with Bill to develop programs for other burned-out city dwellers. Nothing fancy, just day trips to the farm, chances to disconnect and breathe and remember what matters. Thunder proved to be a natural therapy horse, his calm presence helping others the way he'd helped Anna. "You've changed this place," Bill told her one evening as they watched the sunset from the porch. "Made it more than just a farm." Anna looked at the paddocks where Thunder grazed peacefully. A small group of visitors was leaving after their first farm experience, looking more relaxed than when they'd arrived. "The farm changed me first," she replied. Sarah and Janet visited more regularly now, sometimes helping with the program, sometimes just sitting with Anna and talking. The awkwardness of her disappearance faded, replaced by a deeper understanding of who she was becoming. "I worried we'd lost you," Janet admitted during one visit. "But really, we just found a different version of you, a happier one." The world had changed, or maybe just Anna's place in it. She no longer felt the need to apologize for choosing peace over success, simplicity over status. Her story had helped others question their own paths, but more importantly, it had led her back to herself. Thunder remained her constant companion, their bond growing stronger each day. In him, she'd found what she'd been searching for without knowing it, a connection that demanded nothing but honesty, a purpose that fulfilled rather than drained her. "We did it, boy," she whispered to him one evening, standing in the golden light of sunset. The phrase that had once sparked scandal now held only truth. They had done it. They had found their way home. The city lights still glowed on the horizon, but they no longer called to her. Anna had found her place in the world, not in gleaming office towers, but in quiet barn aisles and open fields. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but it was the life she needed. And in the end, that made all the difference. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a drone buzzing over the paddocks, spooking the horses and disrupting the morning feed. Thunder reared up, eyes wide with fear, nearly knocking Anna over as she tried to calm him. Bill chased the drone away with choice words and a well-aimed rock, but the damage was done. "Vultures," he muttered, helping Anna settle the agitated horses. "Can't leave well enough alone." The drone was just the beginning. Despite Kate's thoughtful article and Anna's careful interviews, sensationalist media outlets continued twisting her story, focusing on the salacious implications of doing it with horses rather than the real message of finding peace and purpose. Anonymous comments flooded online articles. "She's clearly having a breakdown. Rich girl playing farmer. There has to be more to the story." The speculation grew wilder, with some suggesting she was hiding from criminal charges or running a secret cult. The truth, that she'd simply chosen a different path, seemed too boring for those hungry for scandal. The farm's phone rang constantly with interview requests and TV producers promising to tell the real story. Some offered significant money, as if Anna's piece could be bought and sold like any other commodity. Bill unplugged the landline after the third middle-of-the-night call. "They don't understand," Anna told Thunder one morning, pressing her face into his mane as cameras clicked from beyond the fence. "They can't imagine someone choosing this life without some dark secret behind it." The therapy programs began to suffer. Potential clients, initially drawn to the idea of finding their own peace, were scared away by the media circus. Those who did come often seemed more interested in getting selfies with the horse girl than in genuine healing. Sarah visited more frequently, worried about the toll the attention was taking. "You can't hide forever," she said gently, watching Anna move Thunder to a back paddock away from prying eyes. "Maybe if you gave them more of the story?" "What more is there to tell?" Anna asked, frustrated. "I was unhappy. I left. I found happiness here. Why isn't that enough?" But the pressure kept building. Tabloids dug into her past, interviewing old colleagues and college acquaintances, anyone who might have a juicy detail to share. They painted her as everything from a troubled soul to a calculating manipulator, each version further from the truth. The worst came when someone leaked her old therapy records. Headlines screamed about anxiety medications and panic attacks, as if mental health struggles were somehow scandalous. The farm was flooded with self-proclaimed wellness experts offering to save her, each one certain they knew better than Anna what she needed. Thunder became her sanctuary in the storm. While the world outside the farm spun theories and spread rumors, he remained constant. His daily needs, feeding, grooming, exercise, gave structure to her days when everything else felt chaotic. In his presence, the noise of the world faded to background static. But even this peaceful relationship became fodder for speculation. Amateur psychologists wrote think pieces about emotional displacement and maladaptive coping mechanisms. They questioned whether her bond with Thunder was healthy, as if any connection that didn't fit their narrow definition of normal must be pathological. Janet struggled with a public scrutiny of her daughter. "I just want to protect you," she said during one visit, tears in her eyes as she read yet another sensational article. "But I don't know how." Anna hugged her mother, both of them standing in the barn aisle, while Thunder watched curiously from a stall. "You protect me by understanding," she said. "By seeing that I'm actually happy here, regardless of what they say." Bill stood firm through it all, defending Anna to reporters and turning away trespassers with his trademark gruffness. But even he couldn't stop the steady erosion of their peace. Visitors to the farm dropped off completely, scared away by the media presence. The therapy programs they'd worked so hard to build began to crumble. "Maybe I should leave," Anna suggested one evening, watching another news van drive slowly past the farm. "Find somewhere else, start over." Bill shook his head. Running once was brave. Running again would just prove them right. He looked out over the paddocks where Thunder grazed peacefully, oblivious to the chaos his presence had supposedly caused. Sometimes peace comes with a price. Question is, are you willing to pay it? The answer came to Anna gradually, during long rides with Thunder through the back fields. She realized that true peace wasn't about escaping the world's judgment. It was about being strong enough to stand firm in your truth despite it. She began declining all interviews, refusing to feed the media machine that had turned her story into entertainment. Some called it hiding, but Anna knew better. She was simply choosing to live her life on her own terms, letting her actions speak louder than any words could. The therapy programs evolved, becoming smaller and more selective. Rather than fighting the publicity, they worked with it, carefully screening participants to ensure they were seeking genuine healing rather than sensation. Thunder remained her constant companion through it all. His trust in her never wavered, his presence a daily reminder of why she'd chosen this path. In his eyes, she saw herself reflected not as the world wanted to see her, but as she truly was, someone who had found her way home. The price of peace, Anna learned, wasn't paid in a single moment of dramatic escape. It was paid daily, in small acts of courage and quiet persistence, in choosing, again and again, to live authentically despite the world's attempts to define her story for her. Some days were harder than others. Some mornings she woke to new headlines or fresh speculation. But as she walked to the barn each dawn, Thunder's welcoming nicker cutting through the noise of the world, she knew the price was worth it. This was her peace, hard-won and precious. No amount of public scrutiny could take that away unless she let it. And Anna, who had already walked away from one life to find this one, had no intention of letting go. Spring came early that year, painting the farm in soft greens and wildflowers. Anna stood at Thunder's paddock one morning, watching the sunrise paint the sky in pinks and golds, realizing it had been exactly 1 year since she'd first walked away from her city life. The media circus had finally begun to die down, leaving behind a different kind of peace, one that felt earned rather than escaped to. She'd moved out of the room above the barn and into a small cottage on the far end of Bill's property. It was nothing fancy, just 2 rooms with a tiny kitchen and a porch that faced the horse pastures. But it was hers, bought with money she'd saved from her corporate days and the small income she now made helping Bill run the farm's therapeutic riding program. Thunder had his own paddock right outside her bedroom window. Some nights she'd wake to the soft sound of him grazing, his peaceful presence better than any white noise machine she'd ever bought in the city. He'd come so far from the standoffish horse she'd first met. Now he was the backbone of their program, helping others find their own path to healing. The therapy programs had evolved, becoming something more intimate and authentic than their original vision. They no longer tried to accommodate everyone. Instead, they focused on people who truly needed the kind of peace Anna had found here. Small groups came for weekend retreats, learning not just about horses but about reconnecting with themselves. Sarah had become a regular visitor, sometimes bringing small groups from her own therapy practice in the city. "You've created something special here," she told Anna one evening as they watched a sunset from the cottage porch. "Something real." The city felt like a distant memory now, though reminders occasionally surfaced. Her old company had featured her story in their mental health awareness campaign, without her permission, of course. But even that couldn't touch her anymore. She'd stopped reading about herself online, stopped caring what theories people spun about her choices. Bill had officially made her a partner in the farm's operations, teaching her everything he knew about running the place. "Getting too old to do it all myself," he'd said gruffly, though they both knew it was more than that. He'd found in her the daughter he'd never had, someone who understood the soul of this place like he did. Some of her old colleagues had found their own ways to make changes. Tom had quit his job to start a workplace wellness consulting firm, using Anna's story, with her blessing, to help others recognize the signs of burnout before they reach their breaking point. He brought his clients to the farm sometimes, letting them see firsthand what choosing a different path could look like. Janet had finally stopped trying to convince Anna to come back to the city. Instead, she'd started spending more time at the farm, discovering her own connection with the horses. She'd even started taking riding lessons, though she insisted she was too old to really learn. Thunder was particularly gentle with her, as if he understood she needed extra patience. The phrase "doing it" had become something of an inside joke among those who knew the real story. Whenever someone at the farm found their groove with a particular task or connected with a horse, they'd say they were doing it, a small act of reclaiming the narrative that had once threatened to overshadow everything. Anna's life had settled into rhythms that felt both new and ancient. Early mornings with Thunder, teaching afternoon sessions with therapy groups, quiet evenings on her porch watching the sun set behind the barn. She'd started writing about her experiences, not for publication but for herself, finding words for the transformation she'd undergone. The corporate skills she'd once thought useless in this new life had found their own place. She helped Bill modernize the farm's operations, set up better programs, reach the right people. But now these skills served something real, something that mattered beyond profit margins and market shares. One morning, as she worked with Thunder in the round pen, a new therapy group watched from the fence. A young woman, clearly struggling with her own burnout, asked the question Anna had heard so many times. "Don't you miss your old life?" Anna paused, letting Thunder circle her quietly, their connection visible in every subtle movement. "I miss certain people," she said honestly. "I miss some of the security, some of the clarity of knowing exactly what was expected of me." She clicked softly and Thunder changed direction, responding to her energy. "But I don't miss living someone else's version of success. I don't miss feeling like I was slowly disappearing." The woman nodded, understanding in her eyes. This was why their program worked, not because it promised escape, but because it showed another way was possible. Not everyone who came to the farm would choose Anna's path, but they all left knowing they had choices. Thunder came to a stop beside Anna, gently nudging her shoulder. She scratched his favorite spot, smiling at the contentment in his eyes. This was what doing it really meant, finding your truth and having the courage to live it, regardless of what the world might say. The farm had grown quieter as the media attention faded, but it had grown stronger too. Real work happened here now, real healing. Anna's story had become just one of many, each person who came through finding their own way back to themselves. As the sun set on another day, Anna stood with Thunder in his paddock, his warm breath gentle against her neck. The city lights still glowed on the horizon, but they no longer called to her. She had found her place, her purpose, her peace. It wasn't the life she'd planned, or the one others had planned for her. It was better. It was real. It was hers. And in the end, that was all that mattered. She was finally, truly doing it, living her own life on her own terms. The price had been high, the journey harder than she'd imagined, but the reward was beyond measure. In choosing herself, in following her truth despite everything, Anna had done more than escape an old life. She had reclaimed her soul. Thunder nickered softly, and Anna smiled. Sometimes the best stories aren't about dramatic changes or sensational headlines. Sometimes they're simply about finding your way home, one quiet moment at a time. And there, in the gathering dusk of a life reclaimed, Anna was exactly where she needed to be.
Disclaimer: this channel does not support or tolerate any form of discrimination, racism, prejudice, or violation of human rights. The stories presented here are original and created by the author with the aim of promoting reflection, awareness, and dialogue. All content is developed with respect for diversity and the dignity of all people.